Welcome to another Leon Charney report, and we have another eclectic show. We have a musical director from the Volksbühne and also the executive director, Zalmen Mlotek. Then we have a lady coming on, Jackie Cabasso. She talks about nuclear armaments and how we should not have too many of them. And then we'll do a wrap-up of what Sharon is doing in this country. Speaking to Jewish leaders, we'll bring on Ido Aharoni, who's a media representative for the Israeli government. I think he's leaving his job, so probably he'll be more frank and honest about what went on. And we'll do a strong wrap about what's going on in the Middle East today. Will this disengagement work? Will Sharon still have a good time with George Bush? Will Abbas come to Washington and change the scenario? A lot of questions to ask. And many of you may know or not know that Sharon has been in Washington today. We're taping on a Tuesday, talking to AIPAC. And he's trying to convince the American Jewish public or the American public to help him go through with his disengagement plan. First, we start with a little music to keep us cheery, and it's Zalmen Mlotek here. Zalmen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Leon. Delighted to be here.
You're a great musician, Juilliard trained, and I see you're into the Yiddish theater. Why don't you go to Lincoln Center and play for the New York Philharmonic?
Well, you know, I was brought up in a home where Yiddish was a living and breathing entity.
Where were your parents from?
My father was born in Poland. He spent the war years in Shanghai. My mother born in Brooklyn. And they came together from the Weinreich Yiddish course out in UCLA. And from when I was a little kid, I just remember the vibrant sounds of Yiddish filling my house.
Now, people who spoke Yiddish at that time weren't necessarily Orthodox Jews or religious Jews.
No, actually, I mean, Yiddish was the lingua franca of Eastern European Jews in general. And they came to America, everybody spoke Yiddish.
Right.
Then it was about wanting to become Americans. So, but I come from originally from a non-religious household.
I'll tell you why I say that. Yeah. When I was in the Soviet Union, trying to bring Jews out of the Soviet Union, people would talk to me in Yiddish, and they were KGB agents.
Right.
And it was Kagebaga, and I couldn't get over that. The fact that this was, in a sense, the language of my people, and these people were trapping me into admissions of quasi-criminal activities in the synagogue. That's why a lot of people think if you speak Yiddish, you're an Orthodox Jew, or at least a very religious Jew. It's not true. It was the language of the people.
Right, and Yiddish really, it transcends every part of the Jewish spectrum. I mean, you have the Yiddish culture accompanied the Jewish people from the early ages.
Well, it's a mixture of German and a lot of Slavic languages.
And Hebrew and Slavic languages, but it has a literature and music and culture of its own. And the Volksbühne, the Yiddish theater that I run, we're committed to making sure that this language and this culture be heard for generations to come. Because we believe that as American Jews, we have a part of that in our DNA.
What does YIVO do? YIVO is an institute.
YIVO is a research institution that houses the world's largest collection of documents. But what we do is bring the material alive. Theater and music. We did 168 performances this year. It was our 90th season. All bilingual. So we're not talking about no one's left in the cold.
So you get non-Jewish people coming?
We get non-Jewish. For our recent show on 2nd Avenue that Mike Burstein starred in, that we're going to be bringing back in the fall, had non-Jewish people come in, and they had a great time.
Who wrote on 2nd Avenue?
I wrote it with my cousin Moshe Rosenfeld.
And what's it about?
It's a musical travelogue through the golden age of 2nd Avenue. We take you to that time when, how many theaters were running on 2nd Avenue? 20, 30 at the same time. Thousands of Jews were going to the theater all the time. Why? Because this was...
Are you able to get young people to the theater?
Yeah, we're getting young people. The interesting thing is that the show is completely in English. The songs are in Yiddish. And everything is in super titles. So all the Yiddish you see translated on top, and the dialogue is in English. So we're giving people a taste in the language that they can understand about what this vibrant time was. We're talking about, the Al Jolsons, the Eddie Cantors, Danny Kaye, they all came to the Yiddish theater. Right. It's all documented, we know it. So here we are bringing this to life in a way that I brought my son's class. He goes to the Schechter in Manhattan. He's a high school graduate.
What is Schechter?
The Solomon Schechter of the high school. He's graduate.
School.
The school. He's graduate. I brought their whole graduating class as a gift to them to see it. They never saw anything like it.
Well, the audience should understand Zero Mostel, Red Buttons.
Sure.
All of these fellows came out of the Yiddish theater. Walter Matthau, Jack Benny,
Right.
George Burns. The
Right.
whole comedy of the 20th century really came from
And then
the
take
Yiddish theater.
take it a couple of generations closer to us. I mean, you have to look at Neil Simon. You have to look at Billy Crystal. You have to look at Seinfeld as nods to that great time, to that time of Yiddish vaudeville.
But you think that they speak Yiddish?
You bet.
Billy Crystal
have you
speaks
seen
Yiddish?
Have you seen 700 Sundays?
I did.
Yeah. So there's a lot of Yiddish in there.
Well, there wasn't a whole show in Yiddish.
No, and neither is ours. It's not. We're not looking to convert people to speaking in Yiddish. The idea.
You want to keep the culture alive.
Yeah, and we feel that it's an important part of the
comedy, by the way, in Yiddish cannot be replaced.
That's right.
Shalom Aleichem and his comedy.
And the music.
There's things you can say in Yiddish that no one can replicate in English. There's no way.
No, and the music. I mean, the music is an international, universal language. So you hear some Yiddish music, some klezmer music. It goes straight to your kitschus.
All right, so you're now the executive director, and you got a big thing coming up at Carnegie Hall on June 16th.
We do, and we're delighted that Mandy Patinkin has, he recorded this album.
He speaks Yiddish, Mandy.
He doesn't speak Yiddish, but he learned these Yiddish songs. He was a good friend of Joe Papp, and Joe Papp said to him once,
Joe Papp was
the producer of the Public Theater.
Right.
He came to Mandy. He says, "I want you to learn a Yiddish song, my favorite one, Yussel Yussel." So he learned it for Joe Papp, and since then when he learned that, he became so enamored with the language that he decided to do a whole album called Mama Lushan. And he came to us.
That to the audience.
Mama Lushan means mother tongue, and that's how Jews refer to Yiddish, as Mama Lushan, as the mother tongue. He looked through 50 songs. He came to me and my cousin Moshe and some other people, and to research the song, to hear the language, to hear us play them. And then he took them and he took the top Broadway arrangers, conductors, and he made an incredible album of it. And he's agreed to do it for us on the stage of Carnegie Hall as his New York debut.
Who was the greatest Yiddish actor, do you think?
Aaron Lebedev, Molly Picon, maybe, Maurice Schwartz.
Yeah, they had a lot of them.
Yeah.
It was Second Avenue. Everybody used to go on Sunday nights.
But it wasn't just, frivolity. There was serious, people heard Shakespeare for the first time.
Right.
There's a story that one person, when they were so enamored with Shakespeare that at the end of Hamlet, they wouldn't let the actors go off the stage until their screams of "Author, author" wouldn't bring out the author. So.
All right, so you're going to be at Carnegie Hall on June 16th, and you're going to have a gala there.
Yeah, we're trying to raise money for the Yiddish theater, for the future of Yiddish in this country.
And you got Eli Wallach and Ann Jackson going to make a show there?
We're delighted that we're honoring them for their lifelong work. We're also honoring Fred Zeidman, the chairman of the Holocaust Council, for his contributions, and Barry Slotnick as well. I mean, these are major people in the American field and Jewish field who have made a contribution to the Jewish name. Their connection to Yiddish, they have a feeling for Yiddish.
So you don't think Yiddish will disappear?
It can't. It's a part of our DNA. It's our mission is to transmit it in a way that young people who have no nostalgic connection to it at all can find something in it that's real.
Years ago, if you would go to Israel, people didn't want to hear Yiddish.
No. Well, we know that Yiddish...
They wanted to be Sabras tough, and they didn't want to hear about the...
Rak Ivrit.
And not only that, but it reminded them of the diaspora where the Jew they thought was weak.
Well, now we realize what a big mistake that was, because that generation of Israelis lost that culture. Now they're interested in it again. Then it was an important thing to do to establish a uniformity in terms of one language.
Broke through in Yiddish, and I knew him fairly well. Shalom Sekunda.
Sure.
He wrote Bamir Bist Du Shein, which was recorded by the Andrews sisters in days when Yiddish was not on the radio, in normal radio. and he broke through, and
Yeah.
it was a huge hit.
Huge hit.
And
Sammy-
Secunda was actually a very talented
Sammy
musician.
Cahn, Sammy Cahn wrote the English melody for it, English words for it. Sammy Cahn and Saul Chaplin took it, and
Are you still conducting yourself?
I have a chorale that I have a 30-voice chorale that specializes in Yiddish music. We do Gilbert and Sullivan in Yiddish. We do important Yiddish dramatic works.
So this is your life.
It is.
Yiddish.
I'm committed to making sure that people of my generation and my kids' generation can have access
Can
to
your
this.
kids speak Yiddish?
Yeah, actually, I do speak Yiddish to my kids.
You know who speaks Yiddish? The Hasidim.
Yeah.
But they don't go to your shows.
No. Actually, you'll be surprised. They come late.
They come late?
Yeah, they come Shabbos after Shabbos.
Saturday night?
Yeah, Shabbos. They come Saturday night at the after Shabbos, and they come.
But they listen to a woman's voice? I don't think you're allowed to do that.
Some do. Some do.
Really?
Yeah. No.
It's a Jewish law, if you're very Orthodox, that you're not allowed to hear the voice of a woman.
Right.
And so many of these Hasidic people don't, or men at least, don't go to hear music. But I guess there's extremes or not extremes. I mean, it's what you believe in. Well, it's admirable what you're doing. It's cultural.
Yeah.
And you're keeping it alive.
And we're trying to make sure that this language and culture that people have some connection to. And we produce a children's show called Kids in Yiddish. It's sort of a Saturday Night Live meets Sesame Street.
Really?
Introduction for young parents, parents in their 20s and 30s, bringing their kids. They have no nostalgia connection to Yiddish, but they've heard about it. They bring their kids because they want to see it, and the kids love it. It's mostly in English, and we do Yiddish versions of popular English melodies. So.
It's called the Volksbühne,
Yeah.
which is a non-profit organization.
Thank you.
It's having a concert at Carnegie Hall on June 16th, and if you're interested in Yiddish or the perpetuation of Yiddish and Yiddish culture, I guess you people will come to hear Mandy Patinkin sing in his Mama Lashon. It's a good way to start a show. It's happy, and we'll continue with nuclear disarmament, and then Arik Sharon and the Israeli quagmire, so to speak, over disengagement. What's going on? Sharon was booed by some people in the United States. Not a normal event. We'll be right back.
Now available from the Leon Charney Report. Right now, get the Leon Charney Report logo on t-shirts, wall clocks, sweatshirts, caps, visors, golf shirts, bags, and of course, our famous Leon Charney Report coffee mug. The t-shirt is organic cotton. The golf shirt is perfect for the coarse or even casual office wear. The women's t-shirt is incredibly comfortable. The sweatshirt is heavyweight cotton polyester. The tote bag is made of durable canvas, and the caps and visors are great for year-round wear. Plus, you can decorate your home or office with the Charney Report wall clock. And let's not forget the Leon Charney Report coffee mug. Enjoy your favorite beverage from the same kind of mug Leon and his guests drink from. Prices range from $13.99 to $26.99. To order, go to www.charneyreport.com.
We're back. We're talking to Ido Aharoni, who is the media consultant for the Israeli consulate here, and I believe he covers the whole United States except for Washington. Is that right, Ido?
Well, we work
Together.
We work together, of course, with the embassy. We work with the national media, which is based in New York. We work with the national Jewish organizations, which are all based in New York. Although our jurisdiction is only the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut.
But all the media's here anyway.
The national media is here.
All right, Arik Sharon is in town. I think he's leaving tonight. This is Tuesday. We're taping. You've been with him for 5 events in New York. Tell me what's happening. Good receptions?
Excellent. Excellent reception. I think that the Prime Minister was very pleased with the level of support that he encountered here in New York for his disengagement plan. Of course, there are those who oppose.
Yeah, who are the booers?
Those who oppose the plan, and it's legitimate to be against the plan. There are many Israelis that have their own grievances with various government policies, and on the issue of disengagement, there is a certain constituency, mostly identified and linked to the settlement movement, that is very vocal in its opposition. But as you know, Israel is a democratic country.
Why did he come? Specifically, he's not meeting any public figures, right? I'm talking about governmental figures.
Yeah, I haven't heard him specifically addressing this question.
Is Gisson with him here, Ranan?
Ranan was with him, yes. I can tell you that if you look at his schedule, with the exception of one event that was a meeting with top evangelical leaders in Washington, D.C., the AIPAC conference, the State of Israel bonds reception.
No, I understand.
So the whole purpose is really to
rally
convey his message to the Jewish community through its leadership, rally support, and he hasn't been here almost 4 years in New York. So it was time for him to come.
You and I understand. We know this game pretty well. They always talk to the same people. What has to happen, that's where you guys are important, the media, is you have to filter this out to the communities in Iowa, to Texas, to Wisconsin. If I go to a meeting, or you go to a meeting, we'll find the same 100 people centered all the time. And it's the Conference of Jews and this, and it's okay. But it needs to be spread out because a lot of people don't understand it and a lot of people don't know how to grapple with it. And what you see in the headlines is that Sharon was booed. You open up Haaretz in the English, which is the Israeli newspaper, you'll say Sharon booed. You understand? Maybe 4 hecklers did it. So it's crucial. And I know Sharon came here to deliver the message. He needs to get that American support. And also, I'm talking politically now, and Ido can't, that maybe he needs help to show his Israeli party, the Likud, that if he does this, Bush and he are very close, and this is what takes to keep Israel strong today, is the relationship between the United States and Israel. So there's a lot of extra stuff, subcontext that goes on here. Prime Minister doesn't shoot out for 3 days. I remember when Jimmy Carter was doing Camp David with us, and he came to Israel. It's the first time a president left the White House for, I think it was 13 days to negotiate the Camp David peace treaty. And someone asked me, a reporter, what does that mean? I said, it's unheard of in the history of the world that a president is a traveling White House. Okay, Sharon is not the White House, but he's a prime minister. He's got a lot of headaches in Israel, a lot of stuff going on. So it's obviously very important that he do this. And I think what he wants to do is disseminate the message and prove to the internal politicians in Israel that this is where it has to be. He had an interesting resignation in Sharansky the other day, and Sharansky is definitely against disengagement. Is that why he left the government?
Yeah, according to the reports, that's the main reason for his departure. But back to the point that you mentioned before, which I think is critical, and I totally agree with you. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why I'm here.
Yes, sick.
Because the way to do it, to disseminate the message conveyed by the Prime Minister here in New York to the Jewish leadership, and to make sure that it filters down to the grassroots level, is to talk to opinion leaders, that people that shape the public's opinion, like you, like yourself, people that are involved in not just in the world of media, but in the world of public advocacy. So this is why I'm here, and tomorrow I will be speaking to a group in Boston, and over the weekend I was in Milwaukee, and before that in Dayton, Ohio. This is what we do for a living, and we basically convey the message. Now, what is the message? What really is the essence? I think that what Prime Minister Sharon, if I had to put everything that he said in a nutshell, this is what he said. Before he became prime minister, the underlying assumption of Israel's negotiators, of the people that ran Israel's policy, was that peace would bring security with it. In other words, if we will give the Palestinians what they want, part of what we will get in return will be better safety, better protection, better level of security for Israeli citizens. So the assumption was that peace will lead to security. Sharon says that all changed in July of 2000, after the collapse of the Camp David summit, when Clinton proposed almost everything to Arafat and Arafat rejected and waged war. Today, the approach is different. It's the other way around. First comes security. Security will bring with it the resumption of the political process. So Prime Minister Sharon talks about the disengagement plan, the proposed pull-out plan that is going to take place during the second week of the month of August.
Is that set for sure?
Yes, for sure. And he was very forceful when he talked about the disengagement plan. He said it is going to take place, no doubts about it. It's going to take place during the second week of the month of August. And the disengagement plan simply reflects Prime Minister Sharon's concern with security measures. You will never hear Prime Minister Sharon. He'll never discuss the disengagement plan in ideological terms. The disengagement plan has two purposes. The first is to enhance security and protection for the 8,500 Israelis that live in the Gaza Strip and the four settlements in the northern part of the West Bank. And the second thing, he hopes in the long run that it will help both sides to reignite the political process, provided that the Palestinians can live up to the prerequisite of the roadmap, which is the cessation of all hostilities. They have not just to crack down on Hamas infrastructure, they have to confiscate illegal arms, they have to put terrorists behind bars, they have to stop incitement, they have to change the atmosphere and to create an atmosphere which is more conducive to peace efforts. When they do that, we can resume the political process.
All right, I'll take you at face word. Sharon is a general, and the first thing he thinks about is security for the Israeli people. But we must admit that he's done a 180-degree turnaround from where he was sitting before he was prime minister. And I think this is the tough thing that he has to come at times with people, because he's the guy that set up the settlements, he's the guy that put the settlers in there. He said the grand vision of Israel was this. Now, are there such a thing as ideologues in politics? It's very difficult to find out. The one I think is Ruby Rivlin. He's been on the show 100 times, and he is a Democratic ideologue, and he broke with Sharon on this position. Is Sharon doing what's in the best interest of Israel today? Probably, no doubt. The question is, can the messenger survive because of his past history, which is a phenomenon of world history, by the way. The political scene is a scene of broken promises by political people who want to get into office, and once they're there, they move around. Philosophically, maybe that must take place. In other words, to get into office, you have to say one thing, and then when you get there, you become illuminated with the chair and say, look, I have to do what's in the best interest of my people. And that's where Sharon is right now today. And where he goes and how it goes, who knows? We all pray that it works well. I say on this show, by the way, watch Sderot. If you see Qassam rockets still hitting Sderot, this is a sign that this thing will not happen. He will not tolerate that. The Qassam, it's a prototype for me. But watch Sderot. God forbid if you see Qassam rockets there, the whole public opinion will move towards not disengaging. And this is only my prophecy, but I see it. I see it play out.
Well, I think that you're absolutely right. I think that there's not going to be any disengagement, any withdrawal, any pull-out under fire. If the Palestinians will try to capitalize, quote unquote, on the fact that Israel is voluntarily pulling out of Gaza by claiming it's a defeat, if they will try to raise the bar in terms of the level and the frequency of terrorist attacks against Israeli civilians and innocent people, it's not going to work. Mr. Abu Mazen, the Palestinian leader, has to understand that this engagement is good for the Palestinians only in one condition: the Palestinians will know what to do with it.
I'm sure he understands. Whether he can effectuate, we don't know. The key player here, too, is Mubarak in Egypt. If they become helpful, this thing probably has a good chance. If they abstain, and he's got his own problems now in Egypt because people want democracy, they want elections, they want to follow the concept of what's going on in Iraq. The whole Arab world is changing a lot. I was at the University of Chicago on a panel discussion about the Middle East, and that's a very good school of public policy. And there's no difference between me, who I'm very Jewish and very proud of being Jewish, and a peace person. I did Camp David, I was very involved, and a Lebanese Arab that was sitting on a panel with me, or another guy from Qatar who was sitting. They all want the same thing. They all want peace, and they all want their children to live in peace. What they're trying to do, by the way, out there, which is interesting, is try to determine what creates a terrorist or a suicide bomber, and it's not a simple answer, believe me. And they're really trying to dig it out as a research in the university there, which I admire them for. I don't know what the answer is, because you would say a woman with 3 kids with a law degree can become a suicide terrorist. I don't think we know enough about the human mind yet that what brings that about. So what Sharon is, he's in the middle of this box, and he's trying to move it in a way, and you got to give him a lot of credit because he is trying to do it. How strong is he in his party, though, Ido?
Well, right now he is relatively safe in terms of the stability of his own government. Since the addition of Labor to the coalition government, it's a major boost for his coalition in terms of the numbers. It's pretty stable. So although he himself admitted more than once that he has problems from within his own party, he is confident that the Israeli public is behind him and that they support the disengagement plan in overwhelming numbers, which is also the indication of most public opinion surveys.
The key is public opinion, and that's the way this thing will happen. You're absolutely correct. And
there's another difference, by the way, right there between the Oslo spirit and what's happening now, the roadmap. In Oslo, the approach led by Rabin and Peres at the time was more inclusive. It was friendlier. The idea was to create interaction between Israeli economy and Israeli Palestinian, even interdependence to a certain degree. And the belief was that interdependence serves as the glue that will keep the sides together, that will convince the sides to implement the agreements. What happened in reality, we all know. Arafat could never get out of his revolutionary mindset. He never really wanted to have a state. He never really wanted to become an executive of a Palestinian state. Now the mindset is very different. Less interaction and more disengagement. We're building a fence. You're going to be on this side of the fence. We're going to be on the other side of the
separation.
Fence. Yeah, I don't want to use the word separation because it's not really.
Apartheid.
It's a different mindset.
I understand.
A different mindset, because after 4.5 years of unprecedented violence, people have to understand, our viewers, that the scope and the magnitude of the Palestinian onslaught on Israeli civilians is unprecedented. 82% of the total number of fatalities and casualties were civilians. 1,100 people were killed, nearly 7,000 were injured, 82% of them were civilians. This is unprecedented.
He's right. We'll come right back. We take a break. We'll get some more insight about what's happening and how it plays out. We'll talk a little bit about George Bush and Miss Rice, who addressed the AIPAC convention. AIPAC, by the way, is the Israeli lobby, and they have had a little bit of difficulty too, because a fellow named Franklin, who worked at the State Department, was indicted on the basis, I think, that he gave some secret or public, I don't know what kind of information, to 2 AIPAC individuals who now are not involved there any longer. I think they were dismissed or they resigned. I'm not sure, but there's something hovering over that, and we could talk about that, and then we could talk about Mr. Pollard, whom years ago I represented. We'll be right back.
Now available from the Leon Charney Report. Right now, get the Leon Charney Report logo on t-shirts, wall clocks, sweatshirts, caps, visors, golf shirts, bags, and of course, our famous Leon Charney Report coffee mug. The t-shirt is organic cotton. The golf shirt is perfect for the coarse or even casual office wear. The women's t-shirt is incredibly comfortable. The sweatshirt is heavyweight cotton polyester. The tote bag is made of durable canvas, and the caps and visors are great for year-round wear. Plus, you can decorate your home or office with the Charney Report wall clock. And let's not forget the Leon Charney Report coffee mug. Enjoy your favorite beverage from the same kind of mug Leon and his guests drink from. Prices range from $13.99 to $26.99. To order, go to www.charneyreport.com. Is constantly in the news. Now is the time to fully understand that area. Leon Charney's new book offers a unique perspective. The Charney Report, Confronting the Israeli-Arab Conflict, details Leon Charney's TV interviews. From Yitzhak Rabin to Nasser al-Kidwa, Charney offers insight through his guests' own words. See what the future may be through a window into the past. The Charney Report, Confronting the Israeli-Arab Conflict, gives you an insider's view of the inside. Get a real understanding of current events. Available at Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com.
We're back. We're talking with Ido Aharoni, who's the media representative for the Israeli government in the tri-state area, which is New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, but that's really the whole United States because the press is here. He's come here under tough circumstances because he's not well, he's not feeling well, but he felt it's very, very important to disseminate the message of Arik Sharon, who is now in the country. And we're pleased that he came, and we also wish him a lot of luck. I believe he's ending his term here, and you're going back to Israel.
Right.
And you're going to stay in public policy?
Yeah, for the time being.
All right. There's a fellow named Bibi Netanyahu. Where's his position now with Sharon on disengagement?
Well, you know, he's a member of the cabinet. The cabinet voted in favor of the disengagement, although I think Mr. Netanyahu was one of the forces that encouraged the cabinet to add another vote before the implementation of each phase of the disengagement. So it was a preliminary approval that required yet another approval down the road. He also is a member of the cabinet that supported the roadmap, which is the president's the expression or the diplomatic expression of the president's vision for peace in the Middle East. The roadmap talks about the creation of first a Palestinian provisional state and then an independent Palestinian state, but there is a precondition to the reignition of this process, and that is, of course, a proven ability by the Palestinians to put an end to all violence, to crack down on the terrorist infrastructure. We call it the prerequisite. And it's something that is very difficult for the Palestinians to comply with, unfortunately. I don't think it's a question of ability, it's a question of lack of political desire. Mr. Abu Mazen, I think, is afraid, is concerned. He's afraid to do the right thing, and I think he's making a big mistake.
Condoleezza Rice spoke to AIPAC today. Do you know what she said?
Well, I think that we all know that the position of the administration is extremely supportive of the disengagement plan. She reiterated that message, and I think that's, you know, we're all very, very pleased with the American position back home in Israel.
George Bush, in your opinion, and you, I'm sure, know the history of most presidents, has had a pretty unique experience with Israel. And I've said it on the show before. The fact that he said that there's no right of return, basically, for the Palestinian refugees, he took that off the desk and he said, okay, you're going to have a state. So he balanced it. To me, that was tantamount to the Balfour Declaration. That was a huge, huge move. Do you believe that he's still standing by that statement? Have you seen every indication that that's the way he's standing?
We have no reason to believe that
It's changed.
that the president changed his position or that the administration has changed its position. I think that all the indication that we have is that you know, the American position remains extremely supportive, and as I said before, we're very pleased about it. By the way, we in Israel normally don't use the Palestinian term, the right of return. We use the term the Palestinian claim of return. There is really no right, no inherent the Palestinians based their claim on the UN Security Council Resolution 194 of December of 1949 that called for the resettlement of all refugees without specifically addressing the issue
but they
of
forget
Palestinian
UN
refugees.
Resolution 181, which partitioned the...
And of course,
And
you have
most people
181.
don't know, UN 181 was the partitioning of Palestine into two states, and at that time the Arabs decided to start having a war, a conflict, and so now the boundaries are pretty messed up. But that's past history. I think people must look to the future. I believe that Sharon was very praiseworthy of Abbas today in his speech at the AIPAC. I think he's trying to really give him a lot of assistance.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, as a government official, he should get credit where credit is due. And let's face it, Abu Mazen is the first Palestinian leader in many decades that was courageous enough to stand up and speak out publicly against violence. He said time and again, and I truly believe that he is being genuine. He said time and again, the violence is wrong. We're not better off today than we were 4.5 years ago. The violence does not serve the Palestinian interest. That's what he says to his own people. That's extremely important, because he is making an attempt to change the political climate, to change the mindset of the people, and to create such political climate that will be more conducive to peace efforts. And he should get credit for it. However, and there's a big however, he is not doing enough to curb his own opposition, and that was the reason for the Palestinian failure, the lack of political desire. If he will not eliminate the threat from within, the threat from within will end up eliminating him. That's the tragedy of the
Let me
situation.
ask
That's
you a
the danger.
blunt question. You've been in this business a while. How long have you been in the States, by the way?
Well, this is my second tour of duty. I'll be finishing my 4 years.
All right, in your guts, do you feel that there's progress being made now? Do you think that really something positive is on its way? I mean, you and I have seen the Middle East middled a lot. What do you feel?
Well, I wish I had an answer. Although I'm named after a biblical prophet, I'm not going to take the risk of predicting what's going to happen. I can tell you one thing. We've seen in history cases where leaders were able to rise to the occasion and to win by that not just the support of their people or to reconstruct their own personal and political charisma in the process, but they also earned their place in history. And there are many examples of leaders that, for example, Ben Gurion is a perfect example of a leader who made the most important decisions against the will of his own, against the popular sentiment.
Absolutely, 100%, I agree with you.
And he was able to rise to the occasion.
I don't know how he survived, by the way.
If Abu Mazen will do the right thing, if he will crack down on Hamas infrastructure, and he will show that he is an authoritative leader, that he can really implement his policies, that it's not just words, but deeds, then I think he can earn his place in Palestinian history.
The question, does he control his police and military?
Absolutely.
He does.
Absolutely. You see, the problem here is that he needs to fight both things. He needs to fight domestic resistance and corruption. The problem is that many of the people, if he wants to fix the security mechanism and he wants to fight corruption at the same place, many of the people plagued with corruption are part and parcel of the security establishment. So if you kick them out, you have no security and you have no corruption.
All right, let's try to break that down for 2 minutes. Hamas, where do they stand on this disengagement? Do you know?
Well, Hamas, at this
How do you
point,
define Hamas, by the way? Define it.
there are
for
two.
me.
Well, Hamas is a.
Educational group?
I think the best definition is Hamas is a mindset.
A what, mindset?
A mindset. Hamas is a mindset. There are many people who support the goals of Hamas without being actually members of Hamas or being engaged in active terrorism
Friends
against
of
Israel.
Hamas.
However, there is Hamas, the social political movement, and there is Hamas, the military wing, which is engaged in terrorism.
Right.
Our main problem is not just up until August of 2003. Our main problem was we dealt with the military wing, with that branch of Hamas that was engaged in terrorism. When we realized, after the bombing of bus number 19 in Jerusalem, August of 2003, after we realized that something is feeding the military wing. It's the entire support system provided by people like Sheikh Yassin, like Rantisi and others. And we made a decision to go after them and eliminate the masterminds. We then realized that there is really no difference between the system that provides them with the support and the people that actually carry out the attacks. The military wing of Hamas, you're looking at maybe 1,200 people. The social movement, we don't even know how many Palestinians out there.
Are they anti-Abbas, the military wing?
Absolutely, absolutely. They're
Can he
anti-Abbas.
control them, though?
He has to. If he will not,
Is he able to?
if he will not dismantle their infrastructure, if he will not
No, I
restrain
agree with
them-
you, but I'm asking you a question. Does the Israeli intelligence believe he is able to
Of course.
control them?
Let me give you the numbers, and I want the viewers to hear this as well. Hamas and Islamic Jihad together, if you look
Right.
at their terrorist cells, you have about 1,200 people. We also know that there's a growing interference by Hezbollah from southern Lebanon, mainly in the West Bank, but also in Gaza. Mr. Abu Mazen, as under his control, at his disposal, 70,000 Palestinian police officers. 40,000 of them are well armed, we know, well trained, well equipped. The argument that 70 or 40 for that, for the
Doesn't
sake
make
of argument,
sense.
doesn't make
Against 1,200 doesn't make sense.
it's not a serious argument, and that's the argument that Mr. Abu Mazen is trying to make. We know that he's motivated politically. He truly believes that there's a way to co-opt
He
Hamas.
wants to include them.
He wants to be inclusive rather than
Right.
to fight them. And we think it's a big mistake. It's a big mistake. They're using this time to regroup, to raise more money, to recruit new suicide bombers, to collect more arms. All he has to do is to announce that he's going to confiscate illegal arms that will be used in public.
So you're saying he has to make a command decision. You have 70,000 versus 1,200. You want to go down in history and be a man of greatness, then control those 1,200 people. If you let those 1,200 control your life, you're down in history. You lose a great opportunity.
And he'll be remembered as an insignificant footnote if he's not going to
It's
do
not
it.
important how he's remembered. It's important how the Palestinian people survive and whether more people are killed. I don't care how they remember Abbas, and I don't care how they remember Arafat. But what I want to see, and you want to see, is peace. All right, Ido, I know you're suffering. We'll let you go. We wish you best of luck
Thank you.
in your future.
Thank you.
And if you're in town, come by and see us after the disengagement, and we'll see how well it's working. We'll be right back to talk about another happy subject called nuclear disarmament. As you know, this show is very strong on nuclear disarmament. We have supported Graham Allison, and we supported the senator from Canada, Roche, who's head of the committee at the UN who monitors this. We think the gravest problem in the world is nuclear proliferation. So we have another guest on who'll tell us how she is watching it. Her name is Jackie Cabasso. Don't leave us. We're back. I'm Leon Charney. We're talking with Jackie Cabasso. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And she is, well, she'll tell you what she is. She's a monitor of the proliferation of nuclear weapons. And she has an organization called
Western States Legal Foundation in Oakland, California, about 30 miles from the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, one of the United States' two principal nuclear weapons design labs.
What do you think of those labs?
Those labs are serious problems for the world because they have enormous political influence. They are the direct descendants of the Manhattan Project, which was the super secret, super expensive crash program undertaken by the United States in 1942 to develop nuclear weapons. And of course, that program succeeded. The U.S.
Do you think that was a mistake? They created the atom bomb and
Yes.
they ended the war in Japan.
I do think it was a mistake. I think that history has shown, and also legal authority has shown, that those bombings were illegal and unjustified.
But it ended the war. Maybe
That's not a matter of historical fact. There are historians who dispute that. It is certainly what the prevalent view is.
Most people think 1 million Americans were saved because of that bomb.
You know, it's interesting that if you look through Harry Truman's memoirs, and he's the source for that number, he started out using a much lower number, and over the years it kind of grew and grew and grew as kind of the, I think, mythology grew. And if you actually go to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, if you talk to the survivors, and if you understand what a nuclear weapon is, then you have to come to the conclusion that nothing could justify the use of essentially artificial hell on earth used against civilians.
So are you nervous about North Korea and Iran?
I'm more nervous about my own government, I'm sorry to say. I'm not particularly concerned at the moment that either North Korea or Iran is about to use a nuclear weapon, but unless we re-examine our own country's programs and policies and its role in the world today with respect to nuclear weapons, then it's likely that there are going to be more and more countries seeking to have nuclear weapons themselves, because the United States is undoubtedly the most powerful military force that has ever existed in the history of the earth. It's the only country that has used nuclear weapons, and it is saying to other countries, do as we say, not as we do. I think most Americans have no idea that the U.S. has an arsenal of over 10,000 nuclear weapons today. It has thousands on hair trigger alert. It targets a list of countries, including countries that don't have nuclear weapons, and while using the justification for going to war in Iraq, that Saddam Hussein had a nuclear weapons program. In fact, the United States was drawing up contingency plans to use nuclear weapons against Iraq.
How do you know that?
It was reported by a very well-known and well-respected independent analyst named William Arkin in the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, which is a very, credible source.
It was reported, or he surmised that? I mean,
No,
these are
reported
big
it.
accusations,
No, he
right?
had the source, yeah.
He had the source and he sourced it out in his article?
Yeah.
So do you think this is a Republican, Democratic, or just an American policy?
It's an American policy, unfortunately, which has been reaffirmed and carried out continuously by every administration, Republican or Democrat, since President Harry Truman, a Democrat, authorized the U.S. atomic bombs.
All right, why do you think that is? I mean, we've had very liberal presidents like Bill Clinton, Jimmy Carter, some Democrat, I'm sure even Lyndon Johnson in his own way, he didn't use any nuclear weapons in Vietnam, right?
Well, he came close.
He came
threatened,
close.
and Bill Clinton threatened to use them also more
Right.
recently.
So why do you think this policy exists?
Well, so that's a very interesting question. And today, actually, I was at a panel discussion at the United Nations with Robert McNamara, former defense secretary, who is now against nuclear weapons, Ted Sorensen, who was a speechwriter for John
Ted
Kennedy.
Sorensen was a big hero for John Kennedy.
Right, and Thomas Graham, who was the head of the U.S. delegation to the 1995 Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty Review and Extension Decision Conference under Clinton. And all three of them actually talked about what they feel is an urgent need to move towards nuclear disarmament in compliance with the U.S. obligation under the Nonproliferation Treaty. And all three of them, in one way or another, talked about how difficult it was, even for those people in power, to reverse the kind of institutional, historical momentum. Really, President Eisenhower named it correctly, the military-industrial complex, of which the nuclear weapons laboratories that I started out by mentioning are essential players, the historical descendants of the Manhattan
Project. If you think that,
Project.
it's self-defeating. If you nuclearize the world, even the people who own the military-industrial complex are going to die too. It's one of the issues in Israel. God forbid if they had to use nuclear energy or atomic energy, the radiation would come back. It's so close. All the territories, the countries are so you just the whole atmosphere is finished. So
I agree with you.
So then why would not cool heads try to come? So maybe what they do is they economically want to keep people employed and create all this Pentagon stuff, but at the end of the day, maybe people with civil minds won't do it. I don't know.
Well, it's a complicated question. There are a lot of different drivers, not just the obvious ones. Certainly the corporations that are making money are one of the players, but there's also the raw power that is embodied in those weapons and in the elites who actually work with and know and handle those weapons.
You're doing scientists?
Scientists, absolutely.
So you think they like this? I mean, they want to...
There are many of them who do and some who don't. And I've actually, gotten to know the scientists quite well because I've studied the history of these laboratories and what they've been able to accomplish and influence. So, for example, what has happened under Bush, where these policies have become even more blatant than they were before, while not fundamentally different in their character, is in the Nuclear Posture Review, which lays out the U.S. policy very clearly with respect to the threatened preemptive use of nuclear weapons, the threatened use of nuclear weapons against countries that not only have nuclear but also might have chemical or biological weapons, the fuller integration of nuclear weapons into conventional U.S. warfighting strategies than ever before, all show that there is a very powerful institutional momentum for continuing with these weapons as the ultimate enforcers of the might makes right kind of mentality.
If that's true, then it's organic. So tell me, 20 years, where will we be on this thing?
Well, I think we're at a very important historical crossroads. Right now, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is being reviewed at the United Nations, and essentially there is a deadlock now between most of the governments of the world and the United States. As I mentioned, the United States and 4 other named nuclear weapon states have nuclear weapons.
Britain,
the United States,
Germany,
Britain,
France,
no, not Germany,
France,
China, and Russia,
right,
as the successor state
right,
of the Soviet Union. All the rest of the countries in the world, with 3 exceptions, I'll get to those in a minute, are signed on as non-nuclear weapon states. They've pledged not to acquire nuclear weapons if those 5 end the arms race and negotiate the elimination of their nuclear arsenals.
We had the senator on from Canada who spoke about that.
Right, and the 3 who remain outside are India, Pakistan, and Israel. All of those also have nuclear weapons, which, you know, needs to be mentioned.
So do you sleep well at night, or you worry about nuclear weapons?
Well, I've been steeped in this subject for more than 20 years, and I do sleep at night, and I also still sometimes have nuclear nightmares, especially at times of international crisis, and there have been a lot of those lately.
All right, Jackie, we're running out of time. Very quick answer. Do you think Iraq will bring us into an area of nuclear weapons? The war.
Do I think the Iraq war will bring us into an era of nuclear weapons?
An area where nuclear weapons will be used, might be used?
It is possible. I certainly hope not.
Me too.
But with this complete integration of nuclear and conventional capabilities, and with a government that seems to have an imperial mindset, the possibilities are kind of endless.
Not good
complex
days ahead.
And endless. So we really all need to get on board.
All right, we're tracking it here. We're very much against nuclear armaments, et cetera, et cetera. We got to close the show. We've given you a little Yiddish theater, a little nuclear disarmament, and an update on Arik Sharon's visit here with the disengagement plan that he's trying to proceed with. You heard it the second week in August. Let's hope that that works and that there are no nuclear bombs and no more wars, so we'll have a peaceful 10 years, 20 years, who knows. Let's just pray. We'll see you next week.